And welcome back. That was some pretty interesting stuff when it comes to web technologies.
Yeah, and we've got a topic now which kind of is related in the sense that we're talking about. Why is it related, Joe?
Well, we have these different devices, and we
Yeah.
want to make it feel like it's one application, even though you're working from one device to another. So you have the ability to run on all these devices, but you want to give the user an experience that it's one application. We call this the connected experience,
Yep.
and a user can really benefit from it, and an app can really deliver a lot of value and a really delightful experience to a user.
That's right. And, if you think about apps and how they have evolved, they started with, they used to be centered on mobile devices, in that you brought the device and it has apps on it, and you bring that experience with you, and you're kind of constrained by the device where it is, small screen, battery, etc. And things like sharing stuff around people is really difficult. And
That's right.
Showing a picture to people that's on your smartphone and you're passing it around, or people are peering over your shoulder. Clearly there's room for improvement there in terms of the whole mobile experience. So one of the big things that we are thinking of, or want to sort of get you thinking about with UWP, is not only we've created this great way of building apps that adapt to different devices, but you want to make sure that you take that experience with people as well. So you make the user the center. Think about the user and how they're going to interact with whatever your app offers. And regardless of whichever device they are using, they are being able to enjoy the experience of your app. And that means you need to get a connected experience. Make sure your app shares the data, the experience that it's got, and makes it available in the right way on each of these different devices. If you want to summarize this, what you're doing is we need to create shared mobile experiences, whatever the device.
That's right. It's not about it's not about the mobility of the device. It's about the mobility of the user.
Yep.
Yeah, we
right.
talked about that in Build, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So if we're going to talk about this, the platform gives you a number of ways of helping you out with this, but I actually almost want to do a little bit of a diversion, if you like, and tell you something interesting about Windows 10 that does have an impact on this area. This is kind of almost a bit of detail for you. So first of all, in 8.1, if you wanted to download any apps from the Microsoft Store, you had to have a Microsoft account. Now, a Microsoft account is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It opens up for people, to be able to take advantage of Outlook.com and
OneDrive. And it's free.
And it's completely free, so there's nothing wrong. But certainly for enterprise customers, the requirement for people to actually have an MSA, as we call it for short, sometimes was a bit of something that an enterprise didn't want their users to have, and perhaps they didn't want them to go out and use some of the other services that exposed, and Xbox Live and all the rest of it.
That's right.
So this requirement for personal MSA did not sit particularly well with enterprises. So we heard about that, we listened to that, and we were thinking very much about breaking down any barriers for people. And one thing about modern apps, nobody likes the term, but what we call about these what are they? What are these?
They're Windows apps.
Windows apps. The Windows apps is that we want to break down any barriers and obstacles that make you want to use them, and break down the barriers between those and Win32 apps and the old school way of doing things. And that goes right down to the setup experience of a Windows 10 device. So when you install Windows 10 on a device for the very first time, right down soon after you've put the
out-of-box experience.
Out-of-box experience. When you power it on and you go into the initial setup dialogues, very early on, you will get a screen up that says something like, "Who owns this PC?" And the choices are that the device belongs to my company, and that includes, like company or school, education, or basically some kind of a employer or a professional body you're associated with, or the device belongs to me. So, you bring your own and the other kind of category.
What if you're setting this up for your mother-in-law? What do you select?
Well, that would be this device belongs to me. So
you're going to be the tech support for this computer probably the rest of your life anyway.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It's so true.
That is so true. Yes. And then if you choose that this device belongs to my company, you see the setup windows for this work or school PC, and then you have to sign in with credentials, which are your corporate credentials or your Office 365 credentials. So this is not Microsoft account at all. So we've got these two choices here.
That's nice. That organizational account is beautiful too because it's managed by an administrator, not by Microsoft.
Exactly. So this is a bold step forward. So a fundamental difference. So the MSA is not an absolute requirement anymore. Well, with Windows 10, it can connect in terms of authenticating the user identity connects with Active Directory, on-premises Active Directory, and Azure Active Directory, which is the cloud version of that and sits behind Office 365 and similar things. And you can log onto Windows using your work credentials.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Now, and also, there's a whole store experience as well associated with all of this. An administrator for an enterprise or an education establishment can set up a private store within a store, a business store. They're a portal where they can offer private apps, LOB apps, and also a curated list of approved apps from the public store. Or the administrator could just say, no, I'm not going to restrict access to the public store. And then users on corporate devices, if you like, could still install apps from the public store. For that, they'd still need to sign on with the Microsoft account credentials. But you've got loads of flexibility there. So great support for enterprises, but it has interesting implications from a roaming point of view. So when you log onto a PC, you can set preferences like the lock screen and the background colors.
That's right.
And all these kind of things that personalize the device for you. And also settings in Microsoft Edge, formerly known as Spartan, for example. All that kind of stuff is all of those settings are roamed as well. So it means that if you have more than one computer running Windows 10,
not an uncommon scenario today.
Not uncommon at all. A lot of people would have PC, tablet,
including your phone.
And the phone as well. All of this ties in. So these settings are roamed through the cloud to all of these different devices. It means you can make these preferences once and all your devices auto-magically get the same settings. So
it's really neat.
You don't have to go and do the same thing repetitively on each of your devices.
Now, how do these roam across? Are they talking directly to one another?
No. So what we've got is basically some storage in the cloud. So if your PC is a personal one and you've logged on using a Microsoft account credentials, then we're in OneDrive, up in the public cloud, if you like.
I see.
And then you can think of a business cloud, which is Azure Active Directory, and which is it does just the same, but that's where the settings would be roamed if it was a business device, or if you've actually signed on.
I see. So if I'm using my MSA, I'm using OneDrive Personal. If I'm using my organizational account, I'm using OneDrive for Business.
Exactly.
I see.
And this works for what you might think of as operating system preferences. The sign-on color, the page and the color scheme, all that kind of stuff. And it also, of course, works for apps settings. So this is where I was leading to with all of this. So apps can roam settings as well in exactly the same way. They can roam through either for apps that are purchased from the public store, they would roam via the users. I've said you need a Microsoft account to get apps directly from the public store.
Yes.
And in that case, settings would roam via their personal OneDrive. They don't see it. It's a kind of a hidden area, if you like.
It doesn't take away from your quota.
Doesn't take away from the quota, but it's nonetheless, it's there, sits alongside your personal OneDrive where you can store your own personal photos.
It is neat that Microsoft stores things in their storage service. Seems right,
That does seem right.
Sometimes things just line up.
Indeed.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and if you signed on, you've got an identity for your PC, which is if you like a business identity, an Active Directory, then it roams via the business cloud. But the point is, the roaming from an app's point of view, the API is the same. You don't need to know about it. It just works. So that's kind of here's a picture of how the roaming works. It's got cloud storage, whether it's OneDrive or OneDrive for Business, and one app will write stuff into the roaming data area, and there's
hidden folder.
And that will just be synced automatically based on various triggers, which might be the user is idle, the battery's at a certain level, the network's available, obviously. And there's various triggers that cause these stuff to be synced up through the cloud. And of course, and
I'm not really storing a lot in the cloud. This isn't roaming my entire hard drive.
No, and here's the point that's just come up on the slide, that it's actually, it's not a vast amount here. We're talking about fairly small amounts of data. 100 kilobytes of data is the limit. If the app exceeds the limit, then synchronization just stops, and
I see.
then it starts behaving. The roaming folder data just starts behaving just the same as if it was local folder.
Is the receiving device then, is it polling for changes?
Well, it actually uses, interestingly, no, it's not polling, because it's using Windows Notification Service, which is the same push notification system that is behind tile updates and notifications from the cloud. So it means that the other devices are notified when they need to be that there's been a change in the roaming data, and then they can synchronize it up. And that's all taken care of for you by the platform.
And to be clear about this entire scenario, you might wonder, well, can I use an internal SharePoint and can I use an internal Active Directory for this? And the answer is no, you can't. This is Azure in the cloud as far as where SharePoint or where OneDrive for Business is, and where your Active Directory, it's federated up to Azure Active Directory.
That's correct, yeah.
And of course, there's Windows Notification Services, just to drive the point home. That's not an internal service, that's a public service or a cloud service.
Yeah. That's right. So useful though roaming data is, let's have a look at how useful it is. You need to be aware of it, of what it's appropriate for. And this is part of the connected experience, of course. And the roaming settings is just a good old-fashioned string value dictionary.
Like a value set, probably.
It's exactly like a value set, in fact. Yeah. So you can store in it just direct settings with a key name, or you can store a composite setting. So this allows you to sync a bucket of settings all together in just one go. So you give it a key name and then whatever value, and those values just need to be serializable, and you can store anything up in there. Now, there is actually a special magic key name called High Priority, which you can use. There's only this one, which on Windows desktop devices actually does cause a instantaneous synchronization to the cloud. It's only of limited usage because on Windows Mobile, unfortunately, that's not observed. So it just behaves like any other regular setting.
Otherwise, in order to invoke roaming, the heuristic around that is controlled by the operating system, not us, right?
That's correct.
It's doing all the hard work of when was the last time I did it?
Yep.
Do I have access to the internet? All these other things, you never do it. And you can't cause it to happen. Even with this high priority, you can't really cause it to happen. You have to hope that it will do it for you. If a user is looking to do it, or you and I are looking to do it as a developer, we can always lock our machine. That is the invocation.
Yes, indeed, yes. And in fact, before we move, I was going to come on to that, so probably the next slide. So this is how you just query the roaming settings. You use the key name to read it out.
Yeah.
No great surprises there.
It's a dictionary.
Yeah. And there's a roaming folder. So there's files and folders in there as well, so you can store files. But remember, 100 kilobytes of data, which is not a lot. If you start, it's okay for XML, JSON or something, small amounts, but it's not a huge amount. But it can be useful. Now, the other thing about it is that if you have got a foreground app that is running and you would like to be notified whenever roaming data changes, so you got this is for incoming, incoming from the cloud. We've got some changes here, guys. There is an event on it, which is this Windows.storage application data.current data changed event. So you can get notified in your app, if it happens to be running, if it's a foreground app, that some settings has changed. It allows you to go off and reread the roaming settings dictionary or the roaming folder and go and have a look what's changed.
Funny little quirk on this is, if you're reading and writing settings locally, it actually does not raise this data change event until you raise it manually. It's the signal data changed method inside the application data namespace.
Right.
But then you can also communicate to other parts of your foreground application that way.
Right. Yeah. So this it's pretty useful. This is how you debug apps. It's like this is the thing is that actually it can be quite difficult to debug because the synchronization is opportunistic. And
that's right.
Handled by the platform, not actually. You can't just say sync now. But the sure way of doing it is to lock the device, and that will tend to cause, as long as you've got a good network connection and all the rest of it.
That's right. Locking your device doesn't create an internet connection.
It doesn't.
You have to have it.
You have to have one already, yeah. So it can be a little bit frustrating.
I put in my application a little note that says to the user, continuously lock your device and unlock it.
That's a good idea.
I care about user experience, Andy.
Have you got 5 stars for these apps?
I did. My mom and me. There's 2 ratings.
Oh, there you go. Good. There you are. Jerry's tips.
I'd like to see this done, Andy. We've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, we've got a very nice, simple little demo, which is kind of fun.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so here we go. This is a nice little app called Roaming Settings Demo.
Excellent name.
Yeah, very informative. Let's just deploy it to a phone, to a real phone. This is actually my phone connected through on a Project My Screen app. So there we go. It's just deployed. Let's run it. You'll see the stunning UI will reveal itself. There we go.
One of your better.
It's a template 10 app, and you can set the background color to red or green. Leave it on red. And I'll show the code in a minute. And then we'll switch over to x86 and the local machine, and we'll deploy it again. But this time, of course, it's going to go to the local machine. So that's deployed down here. So there's our phone, and then let's run up the desktop version of the exact same app. So it's running on 2 machines, remember, on the PC and on a real phone. And obviously they're synchronized at the moment. Now this shows you how long it can take. They're on the same network, but obviously this is going up to the cloud. I've written some settings into roaming data. Now I'm going to lock the phone, which is going to trigger the synchronization to the cloud. And then let's just see how long it takes for the desktop app to, there we go. It got notified and it changed its color.
Did that really happen, or was that smoke and mirrors?
That really did happen.
Well,
yes.
I'll be.
That really did happen, yep. So let's have a look at the code that just made all that happen. Simple enough. Here we go. First of all, we've got, here we go, we've hooked, a bit higher than that, we've hooked the data changed event on our on-navigated 2. Here we are, and that files on a background thread, so I'm using the dispatcher just to call this bit of code, which reads the roaming settings, and it sets according to whatever it finds in the roaming settings, it sets the background of the screen to green or red accordingly.
I see.
And of course the other thing of the UI was there's something wrong with my video card, and then the green radio button was checked. That's where we set actually set it into the settings according to when the radio
as a
button
string, not as a type.
No, that's right.
I see.
Let's go back to the slides. Hopefully that'll sort out. Oh yeah, okay, we're good. Right, some tips on using the roaming data. It's just a regular folder and setting. So there is that high priority setting I mentioned, which is of limited utility, but does at least allow a quick sync on Windows desktop.
To be clear, high priority is the name of the setting. So when you put it into the dictionary, you call it high priority.
And you could put one of those composites in there. It's not just sort of one single value.
Ooh,
so so you could put a bunch of settings into it, but you give the key high priority, and the framework will prioritize.
Including a serialized JSON string if you wanted to have just an object.
Absolutely. So what is this good for? It's good for settings. I showed an example there where we changed personalization thing. What is it not good for?
Databases.
It's basically not good for your primary app data.
Yeah.
The reason is that the synchronization happens on a when it can manage it kind of basis, and
not good for 101K images.
And not good for images, so it's only good for small amounts of data. It's only good, and you can't be sure when it's going to happen. So you could think of a scenario where you do run your app on a phone, and you write you store in the data in the roaming folder, and then you go immediately over to your to the tablet, and you run the same app, and the settings haven't come across there, so you're not seeing the data. That's the first frustration. But then you enter something slightly different, and you save that, and it's kind of who knows which one's going to be the last writer wins. So it's going to be whoever overwrites the other thing.
Right. So definitely not something good.
Yeah, and
when you trust the data or need to trust the data.
No, that's right. The other thing is that data gets deleted from the cloud if the user doesn't use your app for a period of time, which is currently around about 30 days. So,
what?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Now, you still have your local copy.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, that's right. It still sits there as a local. It looks like a local folder to your app on the particular device. But yeah, the synced copy of it
cleans out from OneDrive.
Yeah, that's right. So
I wondered how all that clutter, especially us, where we have all of these apps that we install over and over and over again.
Yeah,
that's how.
That's right.
A period of time.
So the key takeaway here is. Useful though it might be for some things like settings and personalization, giving that user it's a nice easy way of getting that look and feel stuff, and it's not a general purpose data synchronization mechanism, so don't treat it like that.
I see. So we have our roaming folder, but that's not the only thing we can use to kind of sync.
Yeah, a few other things sync as well, have a built-in synchronization. Credential Locker does roaming, so that's pretty nice as well. Credential Locker is for storing credentials. How about that? You store Windows Security credentials objects in it. It's secure and it does roaming, so that's real nice.
By secure, we mean it's fully encrypted on the inside.
It's fully encrypted on the inside, and there's no way of one app seeing another app's. I mean, so it's an OS service, if you like, a platform service, but it's completely sandboxed to a particular app. So there's no chance of one app accidentally getting the credentials.
So this isn't roaming between apps, this is roaming between devices.
Yeah, this is it. Here we go. We're roaming across trusted devices. And it's roamed, like everything else, it's roamed via the appropriate cloud for whatever the device is.
That's a great graphic. That really does. That's nice.
Good. Glad you like it. Sweated hours over that one.
You're killing it. That's so nice. It's really good.
To use it, it's really simple. It couldn't be simpler, really. It's the password vault object exposes this service to you, and then you just store password credentials in it. And again, you give it a key name, just the same as the roaming data, and then you can hook things out with these various methods for finding resources within that credential locker. So
I notice
really
you're not
simple.
giving a encryption seed or key or anything like that. It's all handled and abstracted away for you by the credential vault.
That's exactly right.
That's nice.
You can do your own encryption stuff as well, but this is just a nice, easy to use service.
How do you invoke its roaming?
It's roamed along with everything else.
I see.
The same triggers, I'm pretty sure.
I see.
So having said, okay, we've got some solutions there for credentials and for settings, what about synchronizing, having this true connected experience? What actually is the right way of doing this thing? Well, there's no getting away from it. Well, actually, I was about to say there's only one way. No, there's two ways. But essentially, it's the cloud. You need to have this common storage up there in the cloud that your app running on all different devices can access. So the cloud is what makes mobile work. And this is the key. And there's a number of different ways of taking advantage of the cloud. One thing you could do is directly store stuff in the user's OneDrive or OneDrive for Business. Mm-hmm. So they've built a common API. There always has been an API for accessing OneDrive, but they revised it for UWP, and it's not tied to UWP, but you can actually access it, of course, OneDrive from iOS and Android. The idea is it's a cross-platform solution. It's cloud storage for whatever your client, but there's a whole bunch of APIs they've created. It's the same for whether you're accessing OneDrive or OneDrive for Business.
It's worth saying that there's a lot of caveats around using somebody's OneDrive. For one, there's a permission gate. They have to allow you to do it, and they could deny that you can't do it, or deny that permission,
That's right.
and not allow you to do it. The other thing that could happen is your application is just stored in a folder and a file. There's nothing to stop them from going in, deleting it, tinkering with it, all kinds of things. So it's a great solution, maybe not the perfect solution.
No, I mean, you need to build into your app kind of fallback behaviors. First of all, you need to ask permission of the user, and they'll have to enter their credentials anyway at some point in order for your app to get access, and give permission to your app in the same way as I'm sure you've seen in accessing any other cloud sort of identity-driven entity. And then you need to account for the situation where the user has gone away and deleted those files, because they can see them. They're stored up in their cloud storage, and they can see it. They could delete them. So good though it is, you need to have the user needs to be aware that you're doing it, and they need to kind of buy into it. And your app needs to handle the situation if it goes up looking in the cloud for some files and they're not there. So it needs to have a fallback behavior.
I suppose the upside is you don't need a cloud service at all, because everybody has a OneDrive or a OneDrive for Business.
Well, this is the thing. So if it's appropriate for your app, you don't actually have to incur any costs in building a cloud backend. Now, there was a good session at Build that was called New OneDrive APIs for Developing Against OneDrive and OneDrive for Business. You go and find that on channel9.msdn.com. There's a video of the session and slides, so you can learn a bit more about that one. But the big daddy of this, if you like, is an Azure App Service, which is a mobile backend in the cloud. This is a great solution for building out a mobile backend and having authentication and table storage and authentication and push notifications. And it's cross-platform, supports Windows, iOS, Android, HTML, and Xamarin clients. very versatile. I haven't got time to go into it now. We've got another session on cloud where we're going to have a look at Azure App Service.
I wonder why they changed it from mobile services to app
Well, it's
service.
because it's part of a broader. What they've done, they bundled it in with Azure websites and a couple of other API services, and they are more integrated and can work closer together. So
I see.
It's part of a whole package of services for apps to take advantage of as a very sophisticated mobile backend.
Okay.
And of course, you don't have to use Azure Mobile Services. Azure App Service is a great package solution, but you could just use direct storage in the cloud if you want, like table storage, SQL Azure. There's whole APIs and different ways you could access that. But can't get away from it. You need some kind of cloud storage.
Especially if you want to have a good roaming experience in your app.
Absolutely. Which, of course, now there's other kind of one final kind of thought. There's other ways of having this connected experience at the kind of app level, specifically more about media. There was great sessions at Build on media about casting media content from one app to another. So this is the idea where you walk into the living room, you've been watching a video on your phone or on a small tablet, and now you want to immediately transfer to exactly where you were and continue watching it on your Xbox. So this is the kind of scenarios that these kind of APIs can handle. Take a look at the media sessions from Build, again on channel9.msdn.com, to find out more.
Pretty cool.
So,
a lot
yeah.
of neat things you can do if you want to build an experience in your app so they can go from device to device.
Yep.
You don't want it to feel like an isolated silo where every time they go to their phone and use your app, it's totally new. I have games like that where I get to level 10 and then I go to my phone and I'm still on level 2.
Yeah.
That's a frustrating experience.
That's right. And this is a key thing with UWPs. We're making it easy for you to create adaptive apps that can work across different devices. And it's like one app and you create the device-appropriate UI and you want that experience to be great for your users. And that it means flowing the experience across those devices as well.
All right, so we're developers and we want the experience for our users to be absolutely excellent, even in a connected scenario like this. Go try it for yourself, have some fun. We've been talking about some cool things and we'll be back to talk about more shortly.